we'll be offering yoga and stretching to get you back to the exit of the building, so you don't pull a muscle or a hamstring on the way back out. Oh, come on! It's like the second to last session on the last day of Tech Ed, right? You walked about 4 miles. They closed the shortcut out of the exhibit hall. So, yeah, and for those of you going, there was a shortcut? Oh, yeah, you could go through the exhibit hall and right to lunch. And it was like, 5 feet. Everybody's going, oh. Just think about all the justification. Huh? I make no guarantees on the quality, sir. Security?
These guys in the black hats, they need an escort. No. A phone, there you go. I wonder if my video will actually play on this.
It should. As long as you have Silverlight installed.
Not lame. Not lame. That's awesome. Oh, boy. I don't know. Thanks. Hey, Matt, do you know why seagulls fly over the sea?
Why do seagulls fly over the sea?
If they flew over the bay, they'd be bagels.
Don't encourage him. Anybody heard the jump rope joke? Skip it. Don't start me. Everybody know what the Ethernet's used for? What's the Ethernet used for? Catch the ether bunny. Oh, come on. It's even somewhat seasonal.
And technical. Totally technical. Boot failure is never a good thing to see.
No, it's because I forgot to hit F12 because you were distracting me with bad jokes.
They were good jokes.
We got about 1 minute. Oh, we learned a shortcut to the bathroom is right out that back door, but that door locks when you go back out. So you get the shortcut going, and you got to walk all the way back around. For just letting you know. I'm just looking out for everybody.
That's the way it should work. All right, ladies in red out there, you can let everybody else in. You don't have to hold them out there any longer. She's laughing, literally. Yeah, be careful walking out of here. There should be a warning that says, these projectors will blind you for life. Be careful, look at the ground. Pretend you're in New York as you're exiting the facility. So I went into the speaker lounge at 10 o'clock this morning, and the director of the speakers said, we're a little concerned. The room we have you in is available to seat maybe 300 people, and there are 376 folks who have put your item on their agenda.
Yeah.
Apparently, she must have misread that line. Maybe, yeah.
I think
this is not 307?
Hey, this timer up here is...
We're in the wrong place, dude.
This
is 308.
No.
We're in the wrong room?
No,
Yeah.
we're in the right room.
Okay.
Yeah. But this timer over here is starting to tick down. I'm a little scared of that. Oh, come on. All right, so let's get everybody waking up. Good afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon. Well, it depends on it. It's like, if you've ever heard, it's like good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone your brain is currently located in. I would like to say, first off, thank you from the bottom of my heart and Chris's heart as well. Thank you for journeying all the way over here to this room to take a look at our session. We hopefully have kind of an exciting session for you to talk about. And I think when you put the word free in anything, people get interested. But our job today is to talk about some of the free tools that are available to you. Some of them built in, some free download, some that just people don't know about. And if you currently are paying for Ghost, pay attention today. Because I'm going to show you a tool that can effectively replace Ghost in your environments and talk about the things that we can do to work with deploying your environment successfully. Now, we'll focus most of our conversation around client deployment and working with that. The tools I show you work equally on servers as well and deploying servers. So Chris and I are excited to be back. This is our second time at TechEd. By any chance, did anybody come to our first session at TechEd last year in New Orleans? I was just looking for an alumni.
I think your mic is not working.
My mic's working. I think the guy way back, oh, he just walked out of the room. So anyways, so with that, one thing I want to kind of start with is kind of give you a picture of the after, of what it looks like when it's here. And some of you probably saw it as I was booting the system. But right now what you're seeing is all built in that we have in our environment of the tools, and I'm going to show you kind of how we built. Now this is a Pixie booted system. Most of you are probably familiar with Pixie. The great thing about the solutions we're showing you, this doesn't have to be Pixie boot. I could stick all this stuff on a USB, I could burn it to a DVD, I could stick it up on a share, have a script that takes me to this location. The flexibility of this is amazing. Even more to the point, the images that I'm using to deploy inside this virtual machine, I could take outside of here and have a physical environment. And I could put it onto a physical device. Wouldn't matter if it's a Lenovo, Dell, HP, home-built system. All the files that I create in this virtual world are completely portable. So it's great for testing, making sure it works, and then take it out. And we're going to show you how that all works through the day. So if I just make a choice here and choose what is called a light touch installation, you'll see how it works. Now the one tool that's not free that people are like, well, what if I want to do a push install and I don't want people to make the decisions? It's called System Center. You can actually force things down with System Center, but guess what? It doesn't qualify for our session. Why? What's our session titled? Free.
Free things.
All right. System Center is a great tool, but it's not free. And some of you that may have priced it out have realized, yeah, it's not free, Matt. So this is going to take a second to come up. I'm not going to do the full install of Windows 7, although I'll probably just kind of let it run in the background as we talk through the different tools that we're using. Right now what's happening, and the address you see here is my other server that's running the tool set. Specifically, it's talking to Windows Deployment Services. The art is formerly known as Riz. How many of you have seen a demo similar to this before? All right, how many of you go, I want to know how to build that? Guess what I'm going to show you today, what Chris and I are going to show you today, how to build that and some of the tools that are involved to actually building this environment. By the way, it's real easy. If you don't like the canned Microsoft plug that comes in the beginning of the tool and you want to change it, so it has another environment, so it has maybe your picture of your corporate logo, you can very easily. You can actually change the look and feel of all of this. And hopefully, I will get my password logged in right. It's always a question of what password my snapshot was created in. Deploy, and I might have guessed wrong. Did I guess wrong? There we go. I either guessed wrong or whatnot. Now what you're going to see here is a choice. Now I'm not deploy whatever I have. When you make these things, they're called task sequences. Just bear that in mind later. I'm going to leave the install here. I'm not going to complete it because then if I click one, actually, you know what, you guys want to see one? See what it looks like? Yes. Yes, of course. All right, so deploy. It's going to take me through some wizards in question. What do you want to call the computer? Do you want to join a domain or just a work group? Do I want to do a migration? So how many of you want to move those XP desktops to Windows 7 or are being asked to move it to Windows 7? We can actually do that with one step and deploy a full operating system including applications. Now it's not technically an upgrade because we're not upgrading your applications. We're actually deploying new ones on top of Windows 7. And most customers like yourself have found, you know what's great? Works under XP. You know what, we probably need the new version for Windows 7 to work properly or an upgraded version or an updated version. We can put that all in part of this package that comes down to the system. So it gives you basically XP to Windows 7 because there is no direct upgrade path. And if anybody's ever done this, if you want to do just CD to CD, CD, you go to Vista, then you go to 7 to get that direct path to be able to upgrade that full environment. But we can go through all of this. Also bear in mind, and we'll kind of dig in a little bit based on our time, all of these settings that we go through, you can make this entire wizard go away. So the minute they clicked on the task sequence, it just started and actually want to go ahead and start the install. I'm just going to go ahead and begin it, and now it's going to start downloading and installing Windows 7 on this virtual system in the back end. But I kind of wanted to show you the after picture, right? That's what happens when you get all this done. Everybody's going, ooh, wow, they're stunned into silence.
I can
they're
tell.
Tired from the walk, all right?
It was the pretzels.
It was a pretzel. So we wanted to start with kind of the after effect. So we need a map on how we actually get installed and where do we start. All right, probably one of the first tools that that doesn't get a lot of notoriety is the Microsoft Assessment and Planning and Toolkit, or MAP for short. Have you ever wanted a tool to tell you where you might have security holes? Are your systems ready to run Windows 7? Are your systems ready to run server? Can I virtualize? How would that virtualization environment look like? Do I have Office? How many usage am I using Office in my environment? Would you like a free tool that could tell you all that? Yes. Yeah, all right. It's called the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. Now, I actually have it installed here, and I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. I'm on Microsoft Assessment and Planning Tool. All right. And this tool, in and of itself, is not the most exciting when you first get into it. And we'll use that one, use my map database. It requires SQL Server Express, so once again, another free component and it'll bring it all down as you install it. But this tool is designed specifically to do discovery and assessments on those types of workloads. Notice a couple there that might surprise you. How many of you have not? How many of you are 100% Microsoft? Oh, first off, thank you. God, that's awesome. That's fantastic. How many of you? I have Linux. I have Oracle. I have a little bit of everything. We actually have a tool that can help run out and do that discovery. Now, on my laptop, in my little environment, you know, I did a quick assessment, and I have one server. Then it gives me some information about what's there. Nothing real spectacular, and you can't really see the power of the tool. But this is an agentless tool. You install it on one central thing, and you let it run wild in your environment. It's going to discover all of this stuff for you to work with. If I go Discovery and Redis, I just want to show this to you real quick because this is how you control how the tool discovers. First, you have to tell it, what am I looking for? Am I looking for Windows, Linux, VMware, Exchange, SQL Server, my Oracle, Sybase? What am I looking for? And then how am I going to find the information? It's agentless, but we still have to have some kind of collection mechanism to find out what's going on. Do I want to use AD if I have that? Do I want to use networking protocols? If I have System Center Configuration Manager, this tool actually integrates into SCCM to help doing some of that. Although I will tell you the agent that SCCM uses is fabulous, right? It's a really, really good agent. It's there. So it can do all this discovery over a variety of methods. You can configure credentials. I'm not going to run a discovery now because, once again, you wouldn't see but one server get discovered, right? Not very exciting. One hand clapping, right? Oh, if you don't laugh now, it's not going to get any better, all right? I've been at the conference the whole week too, all right? So the point I like to bring up, another thing here, they have a software usage tracker. It's not a licensing, it's a licensing guidance tool, all right? Am I compliant? But the legal will tell you, well, that doesn't give you the official answer. You still have to go through that legal, make sure it's there, but it's going to give you a general idea of what's in the tool. This tool is designed to help you with all of this. Now, at the end of the day, when you work with this, I'm going to bring up just some sample documents real quick, so I want to show you all the power of the tool that's here. And here are the actual sample documents that we can look at. So I'll bring up one for Windows 7 assessment. And what it's going to do, whenever you run an inventory, you can actually create an assessment report. And what it does two things. It takes all the stuff that's in that SQL Express database in the background, bundles it up, sticks it in an Excel spreadsheet. That'll tell you, okay, these are the systems that we found, scanned. Here's our assessment values, what we have out there, what memory systems we have, how much hard drive. And then here's individual client-by-client assessment of what happened on those systems. And are they going to be compliant? Do they meet requirements of what's here? All right, with me so far? Have you ever wanted to find this out about your environment or one of your customers' environment? This is a free tool that does it. You download it, you install it on one client, you plop into a network. And the great thing from a consulting perspective, it's a very portable tool. Now, hopefully when you go into a consulting gig or you go into your customers, you'll be able to get some kind of credential to get you in the domain so you can allow to do this type of scanning work. All right, but you don't need a client. You don't need an agent to work with it. Better yet, when you look inside of Excel, this is where the tool gets really fun. If I go to Filter, and I bring up the data filter that's in Excel, I can say, you know what? They're all meet requirements. Let's find out the ones, I just want to know the ones that are not ready for Windows 7. Do a quick filter on that spreadsheet that I'll get out of their tool. It'll even tell me the reasons. And some of the reasons like, hey, DVD-ROM is an official requirement, but if I'm doing a network deployment, do I really need a DVD-ROM in the systems? So it helps you make those decisions. Better yet, this is for us. This is for us IT pros. What about your boss? They probably need some kind of proposal document so you can go spend money, right? Anybody like writing proposal documents? No. Nobody likes writing proposal documents, right? So the best part about this is that when you look at these documents, let me actually get my sample documents back up. It actually will also create for you a proposal document. Now, I will warn you, in the first part of this document, it is Microsoft marketing fluff. All right? Here's the new features of Windows 7. Here's why Windows 7 is better. And if you're not running Windows 7, you're stupid and should have your exam. It's that kind of stuff, right? The best part about it is when you start going down to the bottom after you get past some of the marketing, which, by the way, this is a Word document. You can modify it any which way you want. When you get down towards the bottom, it's taken all that stuff, packaged it up, put it in a nice spreadsheet, kind of gave you an idea of what's going on. And it gives you that information of what do we need. So it gives you a baseline proposal that you might have to tune and tweak to meet your needs of your company. But how many of you knew this tool could do all this? Assess, give you a survey, give you some information that will actually work with it. So that's the first tool, free, map. Microsoft, hopefully you use the preferred search engine of the crowd, Bing. All right, just type in Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. Like that free tool? All right. Now, see, they're waking up. They're waking up. This is good. We got free. We got them with just map, and not just map. Trust me, don't buy yet because there's more. All right? That's Honeycomb, by the way, in case you're wondering. So what about ACT? Application Compatibility Toolkit. Oh, we don't have to worry about application compatibility, do we, Chris?
No, not at all.
No,
all my
works,
applications
right?
just work.
All right? It doesn't always work. If anything taught us about Windows Vista, right? Things didn't work right away. Right or wrong, or, and I can almost blame ourselves for this one. We as a company may not have given the folks out there enough time to create software for the drivers or create actual software that was compatible. Windows 7 has that same driver model that was built into Vista. It's been enhanced and improved, and Rasanovich talks about a lot of the improvements underneath the covers for Windows 7, but the core is still there. The great thing about this is that Windows 7 gets the benefit of maturity, right? It gets a lot of compatibility out of the box that Windows Vista didn't have. One of my favorite stories is I had a good friend of mine, Jennifer Marsman, was getting ready to present. She's about 45 minutes from going on. She turns on her laptop and hears this. Her hard drive was failing. And it turned out it wasn't actually her hard drive, it was the controller card in the system, but it was making a clicky, kind of sparky noise. It's kind of freaky, right? She had a Dell at the time. I took her laptop hard drive out of her Dell, stuck it into my multi-bay and my Lenovo, booted it into the system. Windows 7 did all its hardware detection. I didn't have a single unknown device, and I only had to load one driver that actually came down via Windows Update. It was the NVIDIA control panel so she could properly project, and we were done in about a half hour. And she had her full working system. I changed entire manufacturers. Now, we can talk about the licensing things that I probably just broke when I did that, but the point was things were compatible. But I also know that it could have gone very bad, right? There could have been some incompatibility between the different hardware platforms. Windows 7 is built to handle that. More importantly, if it's not, Chris Jackson does a lot of great things on this, but if you've never seen the Application Compatibility Toolkit, let me show you this tool right now. How many of you have seen the ACT Toolkit before? A few of you. What do you guys think? What do you guys use it for? Use it for Vista in the environment. Have you had to use it on 7 yet, or have you tried it yet? Oh, so you just went...
He said he was comfortable enough with Windows 7, they just didn't do an assessment. They just moved to Windows 7. That's pretty telling.
Yeah, which applications do we need to migrate, move, upgrade, and that kind of stuff. That's an excellent way to do it. What else? Oh, silence. All right. So let me show you the tool. I'm going to bring up the Compatibility Administrator. And I just clicked 32-bit out of giggles. I like to think of the application toolkit as a box of lies, right? It lies. Because your operating systems are going to say, I need this. And you're like, no, you don't. It does the Jedi mind trick. You need Windows 7. I'm on Windows 7, but, oh, this is Windows 95. Oh, come on, Windows 95. These aren't the droids you're looking for, right? This is the box of lies. Now, everybody's laughing at me like it's not a box of lies. Really, it is. Look at some of the settings that we can modify. Let me scroll down here for some of the settings. I notice almost all of these are Windows registry settings, but if I scroll all the way down, look, version lie. I am not making this up. This is a box of lies. Okay? What it actually creates underneath the covers, when you go through the Application Compatibility Toolkit, what's happening fundamentally is you're changing registry settings, right? You're making sure that, hey, these things didn't work, but I was able to track down the registry setting. And trust me when I say there's a ton of knowledge out there. Somebody's probably tried to run the application you're trying to run, unless it's a homespun app and didn't work. And what they do is they bundle all these registry settings or tunes or tweaks. You know, this is not Windows 90. This is not Windows 7. This is Windows 95. We're going to use 256 resolution and all the other different things. They bundle it up into a thing called a shim. And much like hanging a door, and if you've ever seen Chris hang a door, you need lots of shims. Mm-hmm. Love you, man.
Yeah.
Shims help level that out and make that system run on that. And there's all kinds of tools and things. And I could literally spend, and I know Chris Jackson has done a couple sessions here at TechEd, so go back and check him out in the catalog. He did a whole hour and a half on this tool. That's how big this tool is and how you can manage enterprise shims, how you can work with it that's there. But you can take these shims and create these things that allow that application to run properly. More importantly, If I look inside the application area that's here, you're going to see a list of the applications that are actually already have shims for them. So this is a list of applications that come down with the tool that we already have there. And it's of course, being finicky on me. That are there for us to work with. So if you want to play a $100,000 pyramid, that game, there's the shim for it. How many of you are going to go download the game just to test the shim now? Okay, a couple of you. See, I like that. More importantly, the best thing about this is that there's a huge, broad community support about this. And if I go up and take a look at this, first there's a great forum where you can find people that have made shims or have created shims or what settings you might have to do to make a certain application work a certain way or behave a way. Use this. It's run by Chris Jackson and the product team that are up there. It's an excellent source of knowledge. More importantly, if you're looking at getting new applications, how many of you have been to the Windows 7 Compatibility Center or even knew this existed? All right? This is a website where you can say, okay, I need to take a look at maybe an enterprise application for business intelligence, and it's going to give you a list of all the applications, and you can filter. Are they compatible, not compatible, future compatibility, what publisher am I looking for? You're going to get those answers before you start looking for that. So when you start shopping for software, those types of things, it's there. That's one side of this. The other benefit, even though ACT doesn't really get into this as much, really at all, is that you can even have the hardware requirements. Are the devices that I'm bringing over or coming up going to work for me? So the Application Compatibility Toolkit is our second free tool. All right? These are all tools that we can build into our environments and run them and be able to find out what's happening inside of our environment. Good second free tool? Question over there. Excellent question. The question is how does the application shim differ from the application compatibility mode? In some cases it doesn't, right? They have the same settings. As a matter of fact, if you were to dig under the cover and that checkbox says run in Windows 95 Service Pack 1, it's the Windows 95 version live setting that's being tweaked. But when you look at the application compatibility mode, there's only a finite number of settings. And sometimes your application will need more tuning in the registry and different keys and so on. So what it does is it extends that compatibility mode into a much more finite area. And when you make your own custom shims and you know, okay, I need to go to this specific registry for that specific application, you can bundle it up into the shim and make it work that way as well. Does that help? Excellent question. Right there behind him. Yes and yes. You can actually work with it in both ways. You can apply it to that application specifically. You can also, depending on how you roll it out, apply it to the machine as well. It also depends on what that application is doing and where that fits. So it's one of those, it's my favorite IT answer of all time. It depends. But there is a great article Chris Jackson wrote, and you can find it off the compatibility areas, called Managing Enterprise Shims, or just do a Bing search for it. It'll be the top article. Real good idea of how you deploy them, how you have custom deployments, because everything's stored in a database, and how do you work with it. Some really cool stuff, all right? Any other questions? All right. So that's Shred, by the way. So let's talk about Wake.
Oh, I'm all about Wake. So I don't know if you're big fans of water skiing. Matt just did a water ski demo of how to build a deployment environment. He told you about a couple of key free tools, but there are some other things in there that he just kind of skimmed across, let you make the assumption that we had, and I'd like to stop back and tell you a little bit more detail about each of those. When we think about the idea of building out an environment that we're going to use to install or deploy Windows 7 as an operating system out to the users in our network, those users might be, 4 or 5 individuals. They might be 10 or 12 individuals. They might be hundreds or thousands or tens or even hundreds of thousands of individuals. What I'd like to do is use Windows 7, in this case it's actually running in a virtual machine, and show you literally step-by-step guide. Where do you begin? What do I use? How do I start the configuration process? And in every case, when we start thinking about deployment, once you've done the basic planning that Matt talked about with the Assessment and Planning Toolkit, we always go to something called the Windows Automated Installation Kit, or WAKE for short. Now, the Windows Automated Installation Kit is not new. We've had this thing around for years. When we use the Automated Installation Kit, it's really just that. It's a kit. It's a bunch of tools. The tools are going to be downloaded, installed, and you're going to use that kit to provide you with the necessary resources to actually get things running in terms of a deployment environment. Now, every deployment environment is going to be a little bit different. They all have nuances, whether you're working with large environments, small environments, whether you want to burn disks for deployment and do something off DVD, whether you want to do what Matt showed you with Pixie Boot deployments on network shares, maybe you want to do something with netbooks and you need to use USB sticks as a method for deployment. You have lots of different options. What I'd like to do is show you how you actually begin. In this case, let me go to Media, and I need to, oh look, we're already there. Let's go out and get Wake. Now, Wake is actually a free download. It's a big free download, 1.7 gigabytes in size. When you use the Windows Automated Installation Kit, you'll go out and download that kit off of Microsoft's download site. Once you do, you're going to need to install it. Now, it comes down as an ISO image, so you'll burn it to disk, and then you're going to get this. Now, the Automated Installation Kit contains a set of basic tools that you can go in and say, I want to do Windows AIK setup. That will install the basic tools and make them available to you through your All Programs list, something called Windows AIK. Now you can see I've got two tools here that have been installed that we're going to work with today, one called Windows System Image Manager and another one called the Deployment Tools Command Prompt. We'll work with both of those. Go ahead.
Also notice, ACT and MAP are also in this list as
Matt
well.
took the words out of my mouth. When you start with Wake, this is the right place to begin. Wake has all of the tools that you'll use as you go through the process of building out your deployment environment. So Matt introduced you to ACT and to MAP. Both of those tools are not included directly with Wake. However, the links to the downloads for those tools are part of the Wake installation. So as you work through this, you're actually taking all of these tools out of this toolbox, installing them on the systems where you're going to build that deployment environment. Now, it could be built on Windows Server. Matt's actually working with a server-based environment. It could also be done on Windows 7. So you could choose a client machine to actually build out your deployment environment. Now, there are some caveats. Matt's going to show you Windows Deployment Services later on, WDS. That's obviously a server-based product. It doesn't run well on Windows 7. In fact, it doesn't run at all on Windows 7. So keep in mind, you have lots of different options when it comes to working with Wake. In my case, I'm going to run it on our Windows 7 machine. Now, Wake is more than just a couple of links on your Start menu. So if you were to look at All Programs and we were to look at Wake, the Deployment Tools Command Prompt, cool. System Image Manager, some documentation, which is good, and then VAMT 1.2, which is a licensing assessment tool, volume licensing assessment tool. If we actually go to the disk, inside of Program Files, we will also find a folder that's called Windows AIK. And inside, you have a whole bunch of tools, and I'm going to stop here and highlight a couple of them for you. Windows System Image Manager is a graphical tool that allows you to work with WIM images, which we'll discuss more in just a second. The PE tools is the Windows PE installation. We used to only give this out to our hardware partners, people who were building large operating system, OEM partners like Dell, Lenovo, HP, etc. We let them have the Windows PE tools, PE for pre-installation environment. Those PE tools are what we use to install operating systems. Now, when Matt showed you the initial demo today, where he brought up and booted a machine from PXE environment, connected, he loaded a PXE or a PE environment. And he loaded it across the network. Remember, Windows PE is a tiny operating system. It's 100 megabytes in size. It runs in RAM. It does not run off of your hard drive. That operating system allows you complete operability. It does the same things a regular operating system would do. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, why don't we just run that instead of regular Windows? It's a whole lot smaller. Well, it doesn't have security, and that's kind of a drawback. And there is the fact that it doesn't have any security components, which is kind of bad. And of course, there's the fact that there's no security in there at all. It'll run for 1 day, at which time you'll be forced to restart that PE operating system.
So you're trying to say it doesn't have any security?
There's no security in Windows PE.
You all were thinking to ask him the same
None.
question, right? No, not yet. Security is a good consideration, sir. It really is.
When you run Windows PE, you can actually build your own Windows PE installations. And you can go in, you can use this tool, the PE tools. Let's look at them real fast. Those PE tools can actually build your own custom installation of Windows PE where you add additional tools that you like to use. So for example, I love Windows PE as a tool that I can use to go in and recover, say, files off of a hard drive on a failed system. As long as I can get it to boot to Windows PE, boot to RAM, now fully accessibility to the hard drive, sees an NTFS file system, and I can recover files off the drive. It's a nice concept. Much better than I'll just image right over the top of it and lose everything first. So you have a lot of opportunities beyond what you simply see on the Start menu when it comes to working with WAIK. Beyond Wake, we also need to introduce you to a file format change in the world of Windows. And the file format change actually happened a number of years ago now. The file format that we use for deploying operating systems is called WIM. I'm assuming all of you have heard of this before. This is nothing new. We've used it with Windows Vista. We've used it with Windows Server. Of course, we're using it with Windows 7. It has significant value over the old cab file installs that we used to do. In a WIM environment, and please don't call it a WIM file, because it's not a WIM file. I know it looks like a file when you look at it on a disk, and we'll look at one now. Matt, switch over for me if you don't mind. Let's look at a WIM, and I'll tell you exactly why it's not just a WIM file. Inside of a WIM, DVD, let's capture D as our disk. If we were to look, at a WIM, we would find that WIM is actually a whole bunch of different files. So for example, if I were to go here and look at this DVD, this is a Windows 7 Ultimate Edition DVD. If I were to look inside, there's a folder called Sources, and inside of Sources there's a very large file, and it's called install.wim. You can see it here. In this case, it's 2.79 gigabytes in size, relatively sizable. And then underneath that WIM, I've got a series of what are called CLG files. So Windows 7 Home Basic, Windows 7 Home Premium, Windows 7 Professional, Windows 7 Ultimate. What in the world is all that stuff? When we build a WIM is a container, and it contains one or more compressed image files that we can use to deploy operating systems, applications, and settings. They can all be enclosed or housed within that compressed WIM. And you can see this one here, 2.793. The question, I guess, is how do I see what's inside of a WIM? We need appropriate sets of tools to actually view them. Matt, any suggestions?
How do you see what's inside of a WIM?
That's a good question. You know, one of the nice things about working with Windows Automated Installation Toolkit is that when you install it, you get this thing. It's called the Deployment Tools Command Prompt. And you'll notice what it's done is really just built a shortcut into a command prompt window that takes me to the PE Tools folder that I just showed you. Now, the PE Tools folder contains one of the most powerful deployment tools that I know of. It's called ImageX. Now, ImageX can do a couple of things. It can apply, append, capture, delete, show a directory of export, show information about, split, mount in a writable or readable format, remount, commit changes to a mounted set of WIMs or WIM, unmount, and then clean up an existing WIM image. Now, I know you're thinking, wow, that sounds like a long list. No, that's a pretty short list, but a powerful list as well. What it means is that I can now take this WIM that we just talked about, that I just showed you, and we can do simple things like we say, you know what, ImageX space / info, and where was that? D:\\sources / install.wim. Wow, the fact that I could type that all theoretically correctly is unbelievable. Now it's going out, it's looking at that drive location, and that is what's inside my WIM. Now let's dissect this for just a second so that you get an opportunity to look at it in a little more detail. Remember I told you that a WIM is one or more compressed image files associated, in this case, with the Windows 7 operating system. And so when that command executes for information, I get this right off the top. And I can see, here's my path. There's a globally unique identifier associated with that. And this particular WIM actually contains 4 different images. It's using what's called LZX compression, which is the default compression type with WIMs. And then I can see image choices underneath that. So image index number 1, which is the first image inside, is actually a Microsoft Windows operating system. And we can check its total bytes in size. It's relatively large, 1150. It's pretty decent. Now, in our case, we said that there was a series of operating systems that went along with that basic Windows 7 install.wim, and we can actually see them here. So there's Windows 7 Home Basic. And if we scroll down a little bit more, we'll find Windows Home Premium Edition. So there it is, Windows 7 Home Premium. And you'll notice that they're all just tagged with a simple name. Now, each time you install a Windows operating system, you're really just going out, finding the appropriate WIM, then finding the appropriate image inside of that WIM to do the installation with. Now, how do we do that? How did Matt's tool know to go find this image, go find this name or image number inside of that WIM, and then do that installation? Well, Matt had to tell it. And you can start working through that process. When you do, you'll use this tool, ImageX. Now, ImageX is a powerful tool. One of the coolest things that ImageX can do is actually be used to mount a WIM inside of a file system. So in this case, we could say ImageX /mount RW, which is the appropriate command. And you know, I can't remember what to type next, so I'm just going to hit question mark. One of the nice things about the tool, like any command line environment, you expect that you should be able to get examples by hitting the question mark, and in fact you do. So here, I'm going to go ahead and follow the example, and I'm going to say ImageX /mount RW, and it tells me that I'm supposed to provide the directory location. In our case, that's d:/sources /install.wim. And then it tells me I'm supposed to give the image number, image file that I want. We're going to take the first one, so I'll put a space 1. And then where do I want it to go? And I want it to go to C:/mount, which is nothing more than a folder I've created on the local file system. Now I'm going to hit enter, and we have a problem, Houston. One of the challenges with working with WIMs in a Windows 7 style environment is that the local administrator credentials are not given to the users by default. You're all familiar with user account controls. In my case, I'm logged on with a standard user. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, that's not a problem. We could just go ahead and use the elevated command prompt. We could run this as an administrator. Guess what? You still get an access denied message. It's not going to happen. Now, there's got to be an easier way. I am a command line junkie. I like the fact that you can do all kinds of cool stuff with ImageX on the command line, but I realize that many of you are not. Instead, we could do this. Now, do you notice what's happening? We're going to go ahead and run this with elevated permissions. Are we sure we want to do this? Yes. This tool is a free download. Everything about this session is. This tool is called GImageX. If you type GImageX in your Bing search box, you'll find it.
So how many of you don't like to type command prompt lines and are wimpy kind of like me? Now, I love PowerShell. That doesn't count quite as a command prompt environment. But this is for us. So when you look at this tool, you'll notice that all of the things, for the most part, you don't get the split options from ImageX on this tool. The rest of them are here. The mount tool allows me a nice graphical environment where I can say, gosh, you know what? I'm going to go in. I want to mount this in C:/mount. And the source location is, and we'll browse to D. Come on. And we'll just browse down. We're inside of sources, and then we'll find install.wim. We'll open that bad guy up. I'm going to mount image number 1. I want this in readable and writable format so I can add new stuff to it, and we'll click mount.
Error. Unable to mount image. Access is denied. He says it's because you're mounting it from DVD. That's not the case.
It's a good guess, though.
It is a really good guess. Yes, you can mount the image direct from DVD. However, once you're done working with it, any changes that you would like to commit will need to be saved elsewhere. They don't try and write them back to your Windows DVD. The tool is designed for a server-based operation. I know it will install and run just fine in a Windows 7 world. We love ImageX. Love the way that it works. I like to show you both the graphical and non-graphical options. The concepts around ImageX and working with WIM files are the basis for deployment toolkits that we use. When Matt talks about adding functionality through Application Compatibility Toolkit, you're going to take that shim, you're going to add the shim to the WIM. Boy, there it is, shim to WIM. I think there's a song about that, shim. No. Okay. We're building out, using a set of tools, a solution that meets the needs of our specific organization. Whether you use graphical ImageX utilities or whether you use command line-based ImageX utilities, you make the choice. My recommendations would be this. Please go out, visit technet.microsoft.com, read about ImageX. The articles on ImageX are short. We're talking 4, maybe 5 pages long. Practice with the command lines first. Learn what the commands do. They're not difficult in any way, shape, or form. In almost every case, they are ImageX /command, and then image location parameter, image file number, and then destination. They're very, very simple. Once you've learned those, if you find the typing tiresome, or you can't remember the right syntax order, then switch over and start using the GImageX tool. You'll find that you have a better understanding of its operation because you know the command line. Matt, are there any other tools that are free?
Oh, what do you guys think so far? Got a good understanding of what ImageX does? Now, I am a big fan of the tools underneath the covers, and one of the important things about ImageX, when you mount those images, how many times have you made a ghost image before, for those of you who use Ghost, and oh, I forgot that one little DLL. That one itty-bitty little 10K DLL, what did you have to do? Recreate your image. And if you're supporting 10 different systems, you had to recreate 10 different images. Notice when Chris was going through that, did he specify the operating system or the type of hardware that that image was for? He didn't. The WIM files are hardware agnostic, which is a key part to it. Now, the one thing I want to bring up here, and this might actually impress you, it may not, and this actually finished about 8 minutes ago. That's a brand new install of Windows 7 in about 35 minutes.
Yes!
Crowd goes wild.
Does it have Office on it?
Okay. Doesn't have Office on it. I didn't put Office particularly into this, and I could have. And that would take a little bit longer because Office is going to expand to that file. But the great thing about this is those WIM files that Chris showed you, what happens is it's not installing. It's re-imaging the system. It's our built-in imaging tools. Why do I, trust me, I used to use Ghost all the time. I used to be a certified trainer. That's how I rebuilt classrooms on Friday nights so I could be ready on Monday morning. I used Ghost, brought up the images, knew which hardware I had in the room. I was also the guy that ran the hardware. I had the luxury, right? I could make sure all the hardware was the same from room to room. So my life was easy. I had 1 or 2 images, and then based on what classes I could apply the different changes. Well, here I'm telling you, I don't care what hardware you have in your environment, you could potentially just have 1 image file to install on any piece of hardware you have. And the same image file, even though I installed it inside the virtual environment, I could take that file out and install it on a physical PC. Put it on whatever media I have, maybe put it in my real production environment and run with it. This is the great thing about this. And the thing that I don't like knocking Ghost, but folks, this is free. It doesn't cost you anything. Right, it's a free download. I shouldn't say cost you anything. It's a 1.2 gig download to get Wake, and another little download to get the MDT toolkit, which we'll see here in just a minute that we have. So Chris took you through a little bit of ImageX. What happens on the covers? Remember, you're modifying an image on a system. And what he also didn't tell you, and this is what I think is funny, if you thought you saw that image, it was the ultimate DVD, but it had Home Basic, Home Premium, and so on, he could have gone to Best Buy and bought that DVD. Well, wait a second, Matt. What if I go buy Home Basic? What would the Home Basic DVD look like? Exactly the same thing. What about the Home Premium? Exactly the same thing. So what's the difference? The price tag and the color of the box.
Hey, the Microsoft licensing police are coming through that door.
The key? Oh, they are? All right. But anybody ever done an anywhere upgrade? Anytime upgrade with Windows 7? Wondered how that worked? All you did was buy a new key. What did that new key do? It unlocked one of those new images in that image index order. That's why it's so nice to work with those types of files. But Chris and I also want to showcase another new free tool that's going to come with help configure your systems, especially when people throw eggs at your systems. So this is a new tool for deployment.
You little...
Those are viruses.
The Trunk Monkey, the revolutionary idea you'll only find one place. Suburban Auto Group.
Oh, come on, I like the new free tool. What do you guys think of the new Trunk Monkey deployment tool? Oh,
Love
come
him.
on. How many of you want like a deployment monkey? Press a button, he just does it, right? Now
I
we can
think-
do this from the servers. It all starts with, though, and this is our deployment monkey, Windows Deployment Services. Help me deploy. I want you to send systems out to my environment. This is the artist formerly known as Remote Installation Services, or RIS for short. As a matter of fact, when it creates the directory structure, it still calls the directory structure remote install. But its job, within the context of what you've seen today, is help get systems connected to my environment. All right. Now remember when I started the demo in the day today, you saw a menu option. You saw a light touch and you saw a Windows 7 64-bit. That top option is what I would get out of the box with WDS. And all that would do would mount basically a central location for my DVD. All I did to create the central location, popped in the DVD, did a Control-A, Control-Z, found my directory location, Control-V, and I was done. And then all WDS does is, oh, that's one of my images. It uses boot.wim to give us that PE environment to install. So if I hadn't done anything else to my environment, I would have had one server that would have had my Windows 7 DVD that I could connect to via the network and just start an install. Even if I'm just doing a fresh from scratch, nothing customized about an install, you have that with WDS. It's a built-in service to Windows Server 2003 R2. So let me go ahead and switch on over to my server image here. If I look inside of my server manager, you'll notice that I already installed it. It's just an installable role that you have. Nothing real too special to install it. The first time you go through it, you'll be asked to configure it, which essentially, when you come in and say, hey, I need to make a new installation share. And what it does is it builds out the rest of the folder points for me automatically. It also, on my local hard drive here, will also build out this remote installation directory, which holds my images, my booting files that we have there to work with, and anything else that I might need to work with inside that environment within the context of the boot. So it actually creates the drive structure. But in a sense, this is just a share, right, that's underneath the covers that's going to be used when we actually connect and work with WDS. Now, the great thing about this is when you work with just WDS by default, you can actually give it install images if you have custom images that are there. And notice, hey, look at that. How's it have that? Because I brought over the Windows 7 DVD. I use the same Windows 7 Ultimate image essentially that Chris has, and it gives me, hey, there's going to be 4 choices that I can have there. Because it's all a part of that one install.wim file. It's all a part of that one location. I also have the boot images. Now, does that look familiar? Those are the actual boot image files that we've loaded and created inside the environment. Now, the second one I'm going to show you here in just a minute of how I created that. That's actually coming out of the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. And that's that custom install, that nice little GUI window that you saw where I checked a couple boxes, put in some information, and it just went. All right? That's actually my custom boot.wim file. But it all starts with this WDS. Now, why do I need WDS? Well, WDS does one very important thing for my demo environment. It listens to Pixie. It listens for those requests across the network. Make sure those clients can actually connect to my server, get an IP address, whatever else we need to do, and then provide that client a PE environment. Why? So we can finish the rest of the install. And you might think yourself, well, what if I don't want to do Pixie install? Well, guess what free tool you don't have to install? WDS. All right? Now, this tool story gets even better, and we should probably said this at the very beginning. Everything I'm showing you here is on an R2 server. It's an enterprise Windows Server 2008 R2. It will work on standard. It also would work on Windows Small Business Server. I've done all these same demos on an SBS server. They work exactly the same way. Now, there's one nuance on SBS Server 2008. You have to tell WDS to not just detect 32-bit systems. And it's one switch. You say WDS util, I think it's auto detect equals true. So it'll detect both 64-bit and 32-bit. Otherwise, you get a really stupid error that doesn't really tell you what's happening underneath the covers. But it's an error code that if you do a Bing search for it, it'll tell you exactly where you have to go in the command line to run to fix it. But everything I'm showing you here works on Small Business Server as well as we have it. Small Business Server has the WDS service for us to install and work with. But the main reason I have it here is so I can provide that Pixie environment. It also does some other nice things under the cover. If you want to do multicast or unicast transmissions, you can control how does this go across your network. You know, people ask us all the time, how many clients can I deploy with this? Can I deploy 100? Yeah. Can I deploy 1,000? Yeah. Can I deploy 10,000? Absolutely. Now, when you get into that certain realm, depending on your network infrastructure, you're going to find a point, well, does this make the most sense? Or maybe you want to stage deployments, and that's when you get out of the free tools. But if you're looking for something on the cheap, I don't care how many computers you're going to do it. You might just have to be smart of how you roll it out and deploy it. And that's where being a push install is nice, or a pull install is nice, because then you can control it, but you'll have to do that light touch on all the systems, which means you can control which ones get it. All right? You could do it for those environments, just something to be aware of. If I have drivers I want to work with, I can do it here. But the great thing for what I've shown you today, I would never just use WDS by itself. It's nice that it's there. It's great that it's there. But nowadays, with the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which is free tool number, I don't even know what number we're on, 5, 6?
7.
Where are we at? 7? Free tool number 7, the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. Now, how many of you have seen this wonderful gem of freedom? Right? What do you guys think? This is a fantastic tool, isn't it? Right? Anybody gotten really dug under the covers of it? Well, we're going to dig under the covers today. This tool is designed to help us with our deployments. All right? I use WDS simply as that system to listen and wait. And then everything else I feed it is coming directly from my MDT environment. So let me go ahead and bring up my MDT tool for a minute. I want to spend just a minute on this tool because I quite frankly think this is probably my favorite free tool, and you've probably heard a number of Microsoft employees that work in the deployment world tell you that. There's a reason why I use this for just helping build my own environments. All right, I have my own custom images that I've captured. How many of you have ever used SysPrep before? Well, guess what? SysPrep's a great tool, right? Generic image. Well, what you can do is take that image you just made generic, stuff it into MDT, and use it in a regular task sequence. So you can then deploy that custom image out to wherever you have. And this is the other thing that you have to realize about everything that Chris and I are talking about. I'm sorry, you got to pay the price at least once. You got to build your gold desktop. You got to do it at least once. You got to build pristine. You got to, okay, this has all the applications, has all the DLLs, looks the way it's supposed to, has the proper settings. Everything else I might manage with the group policy later down the road, but I have everything there and ready to go. You got to pay that price once, but once you do it, SysPrep it, capture it, put it up on my deployment share, and then we can have some fun with it. Because then in the eyes of MDT, I don't care if it's a Windows 7 WIM image file or a captured WIM image file, to MDT they're the same of how we work with them and manipulate them inside the tool. Very, very cool tool that we have. Now, the first thing I'd just like to point out in the tool here is when we look at the deployment workbench and we look at getting started, it gives you the deployment process. We also have all the documentation that's here. So, I don't know, maybe just out of luck, you guys will think, hey, this is probably the best session that we've ever been in at TechEd. I would love to know how Chris and Matt did their work. It's right here underneath the documentation of this tool. If you look here, Quick Start Guide performing LTI deployments. What is that? If I click on it, it takes me to the help file, which is the step-by-step instructions on how to build the WDS, how to install MDT, how to configure it, how to add your images, how to add drivers, how to add applications, software, and build everything from soup to nuts. Reason I love this tool, I didn't have to go to our favorite search engine, Bing. I'm required by Microsoft law to say that at least 5 times during today's presentation, so just work with me. All right? The point is, it's all built into the tool for us to work with. So look at the documentation that's there. It's for you to use. And lastly, we have components, so it tells you what we need. Now, to use MDT, guess what component you need? The Wake Toolkit. Yeah. Chris is happy.
Yes, I am.
It is a required toolkit, and I've already installed it on here. But we also have the other tools that are available to us, user state migration tools. And this little gem, when you stick it inside the MDT environment, what it'll do. Now, understand what happens. On that system I started the day with, what did it do? It wiped the hard drive, formatted it, brought down Windows 7, and installed a fresh, brand new copy. Well, what if I'm doing a migration? What if I want to say that's an XP desktop? What'll happen? Well, you build your MDT image, so it comes down, and it'll do the same thing. Formats the drive. But before it formats it, if you have the USMT configured for that migration, it's going to do all that user state migration and upgrading, stuff them up, and it actually can stuff them on the local drive if you want to. You can put them up on a share. You can put it wherever you need or have space to put those files for that. Going to wipe out the hard drive, install Windows 7 completely, bring your applications back as a part, and it's going to install. And this is the difference between an upgrade and a migration. It's going to reinstall those applications. It's not going to try to upgrade and move them. And if you think about the applications today that are running on Windows 7, chances are that's probably a good thing. You're getting new copies that are out there into that new environment from XP to Windows 7. With me so far? All right, so this tool is designed to help you with that. Now, how does the tool actually work? When you first come into the tool, you won't have anything here. You won't even have a deployment share, and you actually start by creating a new deployment share. And what it does, creates this deployment share folder for us. The actual physical structure, once again, is stored out here. It mirrors kind of that same structure that we have. All right, now how do you build a tool? Now, folks, if you think, well, it's not that easy, what I'm already showing you, it is this easy. The longest part of your job here will be waiting for the files to copy, because we're talking about gigabit files and large files, and if you're doing more software, having those files copied in this deployment share to help create and munge everything together. All right, that's the most time. So I suggest make sure you have an Xbox nearby. You can build your gamer score as files are being copied. It's called multitasking at its finest, and I'm somewhere around 43,000 points on my gamer score, so I've done this quite a few times. Pause for laughter. All right. So underneath here, how do you add applications? Now, if you have a new application, you can actually add it in from the actual source files. Source files might be on a network, or if you have a bundled application, you can bring them in. The one thing I like to point out here, if I just say application details, and I'm just going to make up some stuff so I can get to the next screen. Oh, actually the screen after that, do I have some source file? I may not have an application that we want to bring in. I don't. I forgot to bring it today. But the reason I bring this up is notice that command details. The great thing about this install is we want things to happen silently. Could I install Flash with this? Absolutely. Could I install any third-party app? Absolutely. But what you might have to do research on is how do I install that application silently? Otherwise, what will happen is it defeats the purpose. It will load Windows 7, start to load the applications, and then the wizard's going to wait for answers from the user. Once again, we want to try to avoid that. This is a light touch automated installation. Question? No, the question is, does it have to be an MSI file? No, it can actually just be the pure setup.exe. And most products, even Flash has it, a lot of the tools that are out there, even antivirus tools, if you look in the documentation of the setup.exe, there's probably a switch, and usually it's force and then /silent or something, or quiet or something along those lines. But each application is going to be different. It works nice if it's an MSI file, but it doesn't really matter. Tomatoes to this actual MDT toolkit, and I can bring those files in. I can also add in, and I've already added in, I can actually add in drivers to this location. Now, I want to bring this up because I just want to talk about that checkbox. Because you can import driver files, and they get bundled up into our WIM files and our custom images. And that little checkbox does something very important to us. It says import the drivers even if duplicates exist. What that's telling Windows, you might have a driver for that device. I want you to use the custom driver that I'm bringing in. In other words, you might have identified that that driver, hey, it gets the printer to work, but if it's like an HP printer, just for example, it may not open up all the functionality if it's a multi-function printer. It may not open up the scanning, the faxing, or whatever other capabilities that printer may have. You might have to bring down the HP toolkit. So you can bring down that driver here and say, use this one instead of the one that comes bundled into Windows 7. A lot of those challenges now are going away because a lot of the Windows 7 drivers are there for us to work with and use. Packages, things like language packs. So if you have an international type of organization, you can bring in the language packs for that install as well. It all starts with an import of an operating system, though. And that import is simply this. Import operating system, tell it a full set of source files, tell it where your source files are. Now I'm going to do everything but the actual copy, just so you guys don't have to watch a gig being copied. And I would find my operating systems here, which I've already copied over. That's my actual Windows 7. And when you're doing this, this box is cleared on, I normally, if I were doing a full demo of doing this for an hour and a half, I would just move instead of copy. It saves time. But generally speaking, when you're working with your source files, you probably need to have it, you'd probably want to leave that box unchecked. And all that does is it copies all those files over here for me to use to work with. You'll also notice here that I have the reference image that's here. This is just a Windows image file that I captured and I brought back up. And I don't know if you noticed, and I kind of sped through it in the demo, you saw that one box that said, would you like to capture the image at the end? You can actually create what is called a task sequence that does just that. Just captures it. And what's it do? Runs sysprep, creates an image, and puts it back up in my image operating system share so I can use it. So now, after you've imported your applications, packages, drivers, or operating system in this case, what's next? Simple. Create a task sequence. Tell it what order you want. Very simple to do. And if I create a new task sequence, we'll step through this one. We'll say deploy 7v2. Now, folks, I'm not a big documenter. I don't necessarily like to document things. But you remember that little menu that came up and said reference image and kind of gave me a little description? That comes directly from these two dialog boxes. This is one of the few times you want to be very descriptive here of what that image is going to do. At Microsoft, when we get new laptops, we can basically connect to our WDS servers, and we have 4 or 5 images we can choose from. They're very well documented for who they are, what role they are, what's actually in them. So it makes my job as an end user, connecting to the environment, knowing which choice they have. It also makes your job, if you're moving around from client to client or moving around from desktop to desktop, to remember which image you can bring down. So just remember, whatever you put here is going to be visible on the other end of the wizard. You can change it after the fact if you need to as well, but it's something you want to be aware of. So please document. Now you have task sequences. Okay, what do you want to do? Standard client task sequence, just that. It's going to deploy the client. This is probably the most commonly used client. Standard client replace does basically the customization. Light touch for OEM. If you are an OEM, you can do that here. Bear with me a second. I'll get your question in just a sec. But also notice you have standard server task sequence. Well, guess what? If you go buy a copy of Windows Server 2008 R2, guess what you'll find? Install.wim. So I can use this to customize that. And this is where the MD tool takes on a whole other flavor, right? I'm just deploying a client, maybe some desktop applications. What if I wanted to deploy a server that had IIS, Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, and everything all pre-configured for me? Could I do that? Yes. You could do it all with this one tool. All right, and that task sequence is actually quite big. Sir, you had a question? Yep.
All right, but then you were saying that you're going to have the operating system and then you're going to do a silent install of the application.
Yep.
So that's all going to be balled up in one image.
Yep.
You can put the operating system down there first. It's going to be like, what is it, an ISO file?
Not to be flippant, but yes, it could be an ISO file. It's going to come technically out as a WIM file, though. And I'll show you the environment, because this is already a pre-built environment, so I'll show you what the end results are. That's how I was able to do the first part of the demo. But it creates a WIM file with everything built inside of it. Now, the story when you're first building a desktop is great, because it's going to install those apps fresh and clean. Because remember what happens here. When you apply a WIM file, it reinstalls the operating system and then brings everything else inside of it. This is one of those you'll have to trust me. It's very fast. Even though it does the installs of the applications after the fact, it's fast. But if you do sysprep of an existing desktop, then everything's already bundled up, and you just throw it right back down on the desktop.
So if you do the sysprep, it's not installing the application.
No, it will. And it also depends on what you do from the task sequence, because you're creating an image of that desktop. Chris, help me out here.
So if you think about what Matt is showing, you really actually have a couple of options. Actually, you have more than a couple. The task sequence lets you do things any way you pick. I talked about Image X. The way that I like to build out images, I'll build what's called a reference image first, and then I sysprep it. Now I've got an operating system I can use with no SID, RID, GUID info on it. I'll take that reference and I'll start adding apps. I add Office because I know all my users are going to use it. And then I snapshot it again. Now I've got another image. Remember, I can put more than one image in a WIM, right? I've got another image with that reference that's more than just reference. It's reference plus Office. Now, I could choose to do that another way. I could use this tool and I could say, you know what, I don't want Office as part of the image. Instead, I want to deploy the reference. Then I want you to go find the Office files and install them silently. The point is, I think that Matt's making, and maybe the answer to the question you're asking, do I have to do it one way? No. We want to be real flexible with our deployment tools, so you can make one image that has everything built into it, and it's literally copying files to a drive, and you're ready to go. Or, if you like, you can take a base install that as copied files, and then come back and say, install these applications thereafter. So you have lots of options. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Here I can select the OS. I'm just going to go through this real quick. Notice it gives me all the operating systems that are there. I can make the choice of what I want. So maybe I want to have Windows 7 Ultimate for this one. How I'm going to activate the product. So depending on how you license the software, you still have to put the key in sometime. You can do it here with multi-activation keys if you have it. What OS settings? This is just basics here. What I tell folks here, yeah, you can put this information in, but if you're using group policy, it might be one of those things where, you know what, I don't need to worry about this. You can set the home page. If you're not sure where to set your home page, I always recommend Big. It's a good choice. You can specify this. Now, usually you might be able to specify or use a specified local password. You can apply it. There's going to be a choice later where it says ask the user to set the local admin password. If I catch any of you asking the user to set the local admin password, I will personally fly to your location and beat you with a stick. All right? You're just asking problems. Now, what I normally will do is generally not specify it if you can avoid it, if you're the guy doing the install, because it avoids the syndrome of you specify something here, you go to lunch, you get a really big turkey sandwich, and you get some fries and a Coke, and you come back from lunch, and the system's at the login screen. What did I type in? Uh-oh. All right, and then you're back into the FDIS format reboot dance of destruction, right? Okay. So we can go through and create this task sequence, and I'll just put one in just for giggles. Make sure I spell it right, which is always a trouble. I didn't get it right. See, this thing irritates me. I hate typing. I really do. It actually creates a task sequence. Now, I also just want to put a little something in your nugget. We're going to talk about something in a bit. It's our last free tool. You see a little button that says View Script? 10-point bonus question, what is that? PowerShell. All right, it actually creates PowerShell script for you to work with. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. And I finished it, and now I have my task sequence for deploying Windows. And I can go in and take a look at this. And we have a couple things we can do right away. We can do some filtering. That this task sequence is only going to run on a certain type of computer, certain type of operating system level, or it can run on any platform. I can even go in and modify that task sequence for me to use sometime today. Please come up. Come on, slow environment. All right. I can actually see what's going on, and I can go in and add in steps. I can make new steps. I can check the BIOS if I need to. And notice a lot of it that's running are actually just Windows script files. So you can even go into the directory and customize those script files if you need to, although I recommend against it. Make copies if you can and work with it. The nice thing about this is even the install here, if I go install operating system, it tells me what disk and partition it's going to lay it down on. And by default, it's going to be the first drive controller or the first drive on that system. But you can change that if you want to work with it. So there's a lot of power in the MDT tool to get things deployed properly inside of it. So that's one of our favorite tools. Our other favorite one is, I just love that picture.
How many of you have eaten octopus? You're daring. The little legs, I can't get by them. Squid, I can kind of do. Calamari's awesome, but just as long as it's not those whole little legs. I realize that Office is not a free tool. I also realize that the vast majority of you are going to deploy Office into your environment. Now, when you do that, let me make a couple of suggestions to you. Traditional Microsoft Office retail versions come in, I shouldn't say that. Traditional Office versions come in two types, retail and volume licensed. Now, if you go out and get a retail edition of Office and use that as the base for your deployments, you're going to have some significant limitations. You're going to be stuck doing the deployments with the install the operating system, then come back at some later point in time and install Microsoft Office. And while that certainly can work, there is a much easier and much better way to do that. If you'll use a volume licensed edition, I happen to have one here. This is Office Professional Plus 2010. When you go into a volume licensed edition, you'll notice that there's an extra folder on that disk. It's called the admin folder, and inside of that admin folder is a tool called the Office Customization Toolkit. This allows me to build custom installation components that I can use as answer files for the installation of Office. Now, those files can also be used in conjunction with the MDT so that I can automate those installations in conjunction with the operating system. Now, the way that this actually works, and what the heck, let's actually try it, shall we? So let's go in and we're going to go to here and we're going to say, let's do a command prompt, what the heck. That would probably be better. Let's switch to the right directory. And it's Office Professional Plus 2010. Okay.
Tab. Hit your tab key. Hit your tab key.
Thank you. You didn't think I could type that correctly. I'm totally sad.
I didn't.
Look, they said, we know. That is so wrong. Setup.exe/admin. And this is what you'll get. Now, the nice thing is you're going to create setup customization files for your installations of Office. In this case, let's run through this. We'll go ahead and click OK. And it's going to go and get the selected information for Office 2010 Professional in the 64-bit edition. And we're going to walk through the tool at this point, and we're simply going to create a file. Now, the file is already in process. We're going to just step through, and we'll say, okay, where do I want it to install? You pick the default location, and then provide the name of your organization. So I'm going to say Microsoft. Maybe I can't really spell.
No, you can't.
I need a tab key here. When I want it, it doesn't work. You can specify replicated network installation points. So if you're installing Office off of your network and the initial installation point is getting hammered or it's unavailable for some reason, we can transfer over and hit installation point number 2, which is really nice. That way, my users don't wait for an installation point to become available. We simply use multiple points. In order to add them, we simply click the Add button and specify where they're located. Here we take care of the licensing so the user doesn't see it. Now remember, this is a Office version that is volume licensed, and so by default we use KMS client keys. At this point I have to stop and just give a quick plug to the Office team. Remember, when you're working with KMS keys, you have to come back and be validated by your KMS service every 90 days. If you don't make it back, what happens to Office? No longer works a bit, right? No, that's not the way that the operation works. We get this nice little red banner around Office that reminds us, say, this is not a currently licensed version, but it still functions. So if you happen to make the mistake and install a KMS version on your traveling sales team's laptops, and they're not coming back to the Office, yeah, we're still going to get functionality. With that said, please keep in mind you need to make the appropriate choice, multiple activation key or KMS key type. The two can be used in the same environment. So you might have some machines that use KMS and others inside of your environment that use MAK keys. You're not limited to one or the other. You pick and choose the right license type for the systems that you're going to run. Now, the other nice thing is you can create as many Office customization tool files as you would like. So you can create one custom tool installation set for your traveling salesman using an MAK key, or you can say, I want this for my general users inside my network using a KMS key. We can say, yes, I accept the terms of the license agreement, and I can say, don't show any of that stuff to my user. Just make it happen. I like that. You get to decide what you want to do with previous installations of Office. You can say, I want to remove those, which is the default behavior. You can add additional installations or run additional programs in conjunction with this one. You, of course, have the ability to run and control security settings. You can modify the setup properties. You can modify the user settings for each of these individual applications. You can set the feature installation sets, so is this going to run all from my computer, etc. You can add additional content and files. This is great because as I'm working with Office, oftentimes I want a core set of files installed along with Office. They might be used on every machine. Can add them here. I can remove file components, add and change registry settings, configure shortcuts. My favorite part of the Office customization toolkit is this one. I can work with Outlook profiles. Instead of having my help desk walk all of my users through creating an Outlook profile the first time they use their Office 2010 edition of Outlook, I can actually just go in and say, hey, why don't we just use the existing profile? If we're working with a system that has never had Outlook on it before, not a problem. Let's create a new profile, and then we can customize how it's going to work. In this case, we could use a simple variable function like %username% and create a user profile in Outlook for that user based on their logged on username. Generally what we use for those profiles anyway, right? So you can really take customization to a really nice, strong level. You can add existing accounts if you want. You can customize. You can export settings. Maybe you're going to decommission a computer like Matt talked about, where you're going to wipe the old one out, use user state migration tool to migrate its settings. What do I do with its Outlook profile? Well, I can export the profile settings here if we choose. The point is that all of this is easily customizable in a nice, friendly, graphical way. When we're done, we're going to say, I want to file, save this as, and we'll call this one Atlanta. And it's an MSP file. We'll save it in our documents library. And we're done. Now, what can I do with the MSP file? Well, I'll take the MSP file and use it in conjunction with MDT, too many letters. I can use MDT with my MSP so that my users feel like they have ESP and everything just installs. Yes? He doesn't have ESP. That was just a stretch. Back here, then we'll go back there. Ooh, very good question. He said one of the things that he's heard discussed is the fact that users of Office 365 will also get the Office 2010 suite. How will that work when we start talking about activation with KMS keys and MAK keys? I don't know the answer to that. I have not seen anything published on it. I do know that based on what I've seen from other products and product offerings, MAK is a generally used internet license-based approach. An MAK license, you install that operating system, you install that application. Office is the best example. When you go to validate, you're passing the request out to a server across the internet. Microsoft owns, maintains, manages the server. You get a one-time validation and you're up and running. Now, I'm not certain what they would choose for an Office 365 validation. Logic seems to say MAK would be a good choice, but I haven't seen anything published to that end. Yes, in the middle back there. Mm-hmm. Good question. He said, can I use this tool, Office Customization Tool, to go in and customize the ribbons or layout of Office? In this case, we don't. Now, you could go in and add settings, for example. If you were to go back and add perhaps registry entries or registry settings, you would likely be able to do that this way, but it isn't real simple. I mean, there's no checkbox that says, show the following ribbon options. Those are going to be customizations that you'll... He said it seems strange that customizing ribbon is not done in the Office Customization Tool. It's not, because we're using this for deployment. We're customizing the deployments, not customizing the Office itself. It's a great question.
And it also brings into the question of how that works, because a lot of those custom ribbons have to be deployed after the fact. And what Chris showed you, he kind of glanced over, you saw those user settings were there. If you were to drill into that, it would look like, feel like, and smell like group policy. Well, if I'm using group policy, why would I do some of the customizations here? Well, you wouldn't. You'd do it in group policy. So what you could probably do in the guidance that I'd have to take a look at, and we can find out the session, I can get you a definitive answer, is probably use a login script to deploy that after the fact and deploy that login script with group policy.
Yeah, you could do that.
That way you could...
Now, I love this question. He says, what if I want to add that in pre-deployment? Is there a way you could do it? Absolutely. Install your reference machine, install Office, customize it the way you want, snapshot the machine. So here we're looking at installing Office as an additional product. If you wanted a standardized Office deployment across all your machines, absolutely, you could snapshot. You still have to worry about licensing on all those boxes, right? There is that's coming into play. So you kind of 6s on one side, half a dozen on the other. Application compatibility might also help you. Question back here. Look.
Let's take a look at it at the end. And Yep.
You could create application packages to do something like that. Absolutely. Lots of options here. Now,
We got 2 minutes. We're already over time.
you're joking.
Nope.
Luckily, this only takes 1 minute. Everybody asks me this question, can I install off of a USB disk? And the answer is absolutely yes. Don't make it harder than it is. People send me questions, hey, I want to use BCD Edit to go in and format a USB drive so that I can install Windows files so that I can... That's way too hard. That's the steps. You want to run a USB stick and install Windows operating systems, Windows 7 for example. I do this on my netbook machine. I've got a little Acer netbook. Use the disk part tool. It's free. List disk. Please
That's
make
the
sure
most
you
important
pick
step.
your USB disk before you type clean. So in my case, usually disk 0 is the local system partition. You type select disk 1. Then you clean it, create a partition primary, mark it as active, format it with the FAT32 file system. Now I know some of you out there thinking, why doesn't he use NTFS? That would be more secure. You're doing an installation and you're doing an image-based installation. You don't care about security. You care about security after the installation is over. What we really want it to do is happen fast. FAT32 is going to be significantly faster side by side. If you run it comparatively, I like it. So format, file system equals FAT32 quick, assign so that it gets a drive letter. Unplug, well, copy the installation files from Windows 7 to it. Plug it in and boot your machine. That's the process. Don't use a 128 megabyte fast memory
Hey,
drive.
it was clip art. It's insert clip art. Everybody's like, where do you get your images? Insert clip art.
4 gigs.
Octopus one.
You need a 4 gig drive size to use it.
Well, and the last thing, and I'm very biased because I just had my second book come out on PowerShell. PowerShell is probably one of the least known utilities that people know they can deploy it. I built out that deployment share that we saw earlier, and I just want to real quick because we are over time. And anybody wants to talk about PowerShell, more than welcome to do so at the end of the day. But I built that deployment share. I could have done it completely with script. So here's the scenario. You deploy a brand new server. How do I make that server have everything that's there? You can actually do it with a simple script, and it populates, creates the environment. And this script would actually do that. The one thing that's nice about the MDT toolkit is it comes with a snap-in, a module specifically for PowerShell. Anybody wants to see this or talk about this? I don't want to hold you back or talk about it anymore in the sessions today. I can step you through that. What's funny is MDT has PowerShell support, but WDS is not a PowerShell tool. It doesn't have PowerShell commandlets, but you can use WDS to work with it. And the last line is the one I just want to point out. Notice what it does here. It copies over those boot images. Remember that list we got? How did that occur? Well, if I go back into my deployment share, when I actually create those images and captures, I get those file sets that I can work with and bring over into my deployment environment. And what it allows me to do is that once you go through and update that deployment share, you get all the files and tools in an ISO format, a WIM file that you can take and copy over. The nice thing about this, you can just simply copy, if you make a boot disk like Chris just talked about, you can simply copy those files onto that drive, and you essentially have everything on that USB key instead of on your network. Or burn it to a DVD if you have the ISO, and you can do that as well. There's a lot of flexibility for that. Using this with WDS and PowerShell just makes that more of an automated process. So with that, I apologize for going over a little over 5 minutes, but I want to say thank you for venturing all the way down to 307. Everybody enjoy it? Is this going to save you time?